But we begin tonight with a rather ominous sign in Washington.
We have serious other structural things that have to be done, systemic changes that have to happen to, again, hold the insurance companies accountable. Did we get a new clock, or have we not been here at this time of day? Oh, it's 10 o'clock? Must be Eastern time, Western, sometime, other time.
Some other time. Today, a bell tolling ominously in the background as Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi dealt a major blow to the prospects for health reform. The Speaker saying today that she does not have the votes in the House to pass the bill, the health reform bill, that was just passed by the Senate, which, of course, is the one way that health reform could get passed and signed into law right now. Democrats have been trying to do health reform for, say, conservatively 60 years. This time, with huge majorities in Congress, a new president who ran on doing it, and a recognition across the country that if we don't reform health care, the costs of our health system will essentially cannibalize the American economy. This was the best chance at actually achieving health reform that we've had in that whole 60 years. The House has passed a bill. The Senate has passed a bill. We've never been anywhere near this close to it before. That does not mean, though, that the people who profit from the broken system now, either politically or financially, it doesn't mean those people were going to roll over and let it happen. Republicans in Congress decided from the very beginning that even though many of them campaigned on the necessity of health reform, they would be determined in Congress to stop it by any means necessary. They were totally open about their strategy, which was to slow it down, delay. That's the traditional way to stop big, important legislation. Just make it go as slowly as possible. Hope for the worst. Health reform was originally supposed to pass in August. That obviously didn't happen. Then it was going to pass by Thanksgiving. Didn't happen. Then it was going to pass by Christmas. Didn't happen. Now it's supposed to pass by the State of the Union. Maybe? Republicans have played this slow down game to great effect. It's a game they continue to play today.
Well, listen, our goal is to stop this monstrosity. We need to stop, scrap the bill, and start over. And start over in a bipartisan way.
Republicans profit from the broken system staying the way it is because they really don't want Democrats to get credit for fixing it. If they can stop the Democrats from getting something they've pursued, who cares about what happens to the health care system? What's most important is that it will politically hurt the Democrats.
If we're able to stop Obama on this, it will be his Waterloo. It will break him.
It will break him. So as Republicans try to kill health reform in order to metaphorically kill the president, corporations sidled up alongside Republicans to kill reform in order to just keep making a killing on the broken system. Health insurance companies themselves reportedly secretly funding third-party TV ads against reform. Corporate-funded, ostensibly grassroots groups holding events where health insurance reforms magically transformed into death panels, analogized to the Holocaust and, say, Pol Pot. Disgraced hospital CEOs organizing and giving out talking points for angry, screaming town halls against health reform. Corporate interests have done everything possible to stop health reform, and the Republican Party has reaped the electoral benefits of slowing it down and politicizing it thus far. Their win Tuesday night in Massachusetts, in part attributed to the doubts and confusion and anger they've been able to sow about health reform as it has dragged on for months and months and months. And now, a bolt of lightning has struck the entire American political system, and it seems to have hit the prospects for health reform dead on, unless Democrats find the strength to push health reform through roughly now. The Supreme Court today swept away rules that go back more than a century, rules that have constrained the way that corporate interests can influence the American political system. In 1907, Congress passed a law banning corporations from donating money directly to politicians. Over the next century, Congress passed a number of laws aimed at stopping corporate money from completely controlling America's political debate. They're laws that have been upheld multiple times by the Supreme Court, like in 1990 when the Supreme Court ruled it was constitutional to restrict corporate political spending, or 2003 when the Supreme Court ruled specifically that the McCain-Feingold corporate campaign finance rules were okay. Well, today, in one of the most radical Supreme Court actions in years, Justice Roberts and Alito and their 5-member conservative majority overthrew at least a decade of settled law and congressional action and multiple Supreme Court precedents to wipe those laws away. Corporations are free to inject unregulated billions, absolutely unlimited money, into the political system now. If you are a regular person who's ever made a campaign donation before, forget about ever having to do that again. What's the point in individual people trying to influence politics with their donations if Exxon or some other company can quite literally match and therefore cancel out the combined donations of every single individual donor in the nation whenever it wants, in one check. And it can do it every year, in every campaign, in every state, in every race. Going forward, corporations will be able to use unlimited money to support or oppose candidates in federal office. This isn't CEOs, individual rich guys using their private money. It isn't people forming political associations to do political work. It is big business being allowed to use its profits to flood the airwaves with ads against one candidate or for another. So if you're, say, a giant health insurance company who doesn't want the current system to change because you're making a killing, there's now nothing stopping you from tapping into your company's millions of dollars of profits to try to defeat a candidate who will vote against your interests. And you can do it without limit. If you have $2 billion in your company bank account and you see stopping health reform as an existential issue for your company, you can, and your shareholders probably think you should, spend all $2 billion of those dollars running ads against health reform directly. Feel free. This ruling rolls back decades of protections against corporate interference and control of governance. Justice John Paul Stevens read from the bench his scathing 20-minute dissent of the court's decision today. He said, the court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people who have recognized a need to prevent corporations from undermining self-government since the founding. While American democracy is imperfect, few outside the majority of this court would have thought its flaws included a dearth of corporate money in politics. Today's ruling affects everything going forward. If this ruling is not curtailed somehow through legislation, I personally think it is impossible to overstate the impact this will have on American politics. Every major issue that our government deals with will change because the field has just been dramatically tilted, like 90 degrees tilted, toward corporate interests. So, will health reform be the first casualty? Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Barney Frank of Massachusetts, chairman of the House Financial Services Committee. Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for coming on the show tonight. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome, Ray George. It's an important set of issues.
What's your reaction, first of all, to the Supreme Court ruling?
One, outrage. You correctly call it radical. You know, the conservatives talk about not having judicial interference with the democratic process. They have overturned more laws, this conservative group led by Scalia, now joined by Roberts and Alito and the others, than the liberals have. And in fact, this is as you documented, a very radical repudiation of dozens of laws passed by Congress. This is judicial striking down of the law. Fortunately, there is an approach we can take. And as chairman of the Committee on Financial Services, I preside over a committee that has jurisdiction over the laws that govern corporations. Corporations are not natural beings. They only exist by law. That's why it was so odd that the court found that they had this constitutional right. But what we can do that's perfectly statutorily possible and constitutionally, I believe, unassailable, is to impose restrictions as a matter of corporate law on what corporations can do. They are given special treatment. They have liabilities that are limited. They have all kinds of privileges. We have traditionally conditioned those privileges on rules. And I talked today to a couple of my colleagues, and when we get back in on in session, I'm going to designate a couple of my colleagues on the Financial Services Committee to begin working to prepare a package of legislation that will put some restraints on this. So, yes, in the current absence of you can't do the statute the Supreme Court said, because they said it. Remember, they are not final because they are infallible. They are infallible because they are final, as one justice once said. But we can limit what corporations do. And we limit it not as a matter of campaign finance regulation, per se, but as a matter of corporate law. And we will be pushing very hard, and I hope within a couple of months we'll have legislation through the House that will put some restraints on this, because otherwise, as you say, democracy doesn't mean anything. And by the way, if you need to have this to have free speech, as the right-wing majority of the court says, then there's no free speech anywhere else in the world, because no other country that I am aware of, no functioning democracy, allows this unlimited corporate spending in campaigns.
Would you expect the president to also act through some sort of executive order? Would you expect some sort of administrative action to try to work on this? The president said today, of course, he's looking to work with Congress.
Yes, and he's a good constitutional lawyer. Unfortunately, it's probably going to take a statute. I do not think the president can, by executive order, do this. We will be consulting with the Securities and Exchange Commission. We have the power in the public sector to regulate the behavior of corporations. And, we are going to be ordering them to rein in some of their compensation, for example. We'll have a hearing on that tomorrow over the Republicans' objection. We do other things that regulate what corporations can do, but I don't think it can be done by executive order. We will be cooperating with the Obama administration in drafting the toughest possible constitutional legislation to prevent the drowning of American democracy in corporate dollars. There's no other way to say it.
On Tuesday night, when Scott Brown was elected to the Senate in Massachusetts,